Welcome to Leading with Curiosity. Command and control leadership is dead. We interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive coaches challenging old paradigms and fostering cutting-edge leadership. Here's your host, certified executive coach, Nate Leslie.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the show. My guest today is a world-renowned leadership development trainer and business coach. He's been drawn to the importance of team and leadership on performance from a very young age. He was drafted second overall and became the National Hockey League's youngest ever captain for a time as a Washington Capital. He went on to be an NHL All-Star, playing 17 years in the league and becoming a Stanley Cup Champion with the Montreal Canadiens. He was the NHL Players Association Vice President and NHL Man of the Year while playing for the Vancouver Canucks. Ryan Walters' colorful career has also included coaching in the NHL, acting in the movie Miracle, broadcasting, writing, and being the president of a professional hockey team. Ryan, welcome to Leading with Curiosity.
Thanks, Nate. Great to be with you.
Right on. Let's just jump right into this idea of leadership effectiveness. What does an effective leader look like to you?
Well, as soon as you say effective leader, my brain jumps to outcomes. I mean, at the end of the day, all of us have to generate results. It doesn't matter what we do in life. This is a fun, results-driven life. But I think that how we get results is sort of a definitive quality or characteristic of leadership. John Maxwell, and I'm not a Maxwellite, but I like his stuff. He says if you could only have one word to define leadership, the word had to be and has to be influence. So that obviously, you know, that's a key word. And if you'll let me, Nate, I'd love to add a word. In 2021, here's what we're finding with our clients is that leadership is intentional influence. And so I think that leaders today are needing to be much more intentional around how we show up on Zoom, on the energy that we bring to our people. And I've been really challenging leaders in 2021 that your people emulate your energy. And so the idea of leading you, leading me, leading us first is really powerful.
You know, that brings up the idea to me that we need to treat others not only fairly, but differently. And just like an executive coach matches the energy of the client, if the client has something really exciting to share, and I'm a laid back guy and I'm hanging back, that they are telling themselves a story while they deliver that that exciting news. And conversely, if someone's having a really tough time and I just think I got to be upbeat and cheery in that moment, that's sending a really conflicting message too. Does that resonate with you?
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, there's lots of science around whether it's the mirror neurons in our brain. The scientist out of Italy discovered and that we read each other's faces. Like there's a lot of intentionality that we can create as leaders and as coaches, the individual players. I think you and I found that through hockey, and we brought it into business probably. Mm-hmm. And that is that the coaches don't treat individual players different, or they don't treat them the same. Mm-hmm. We treat everybody well, and I totally agree with that. We want to honor people, but people are different. We need to get their best game, even on the business ice, in a way that is particular to them. And, you know, it's interesting. You asked me a question before this interview around sort of leadership, like, you know, what are some of the key components? And I go back to Jim Collins' stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. And I love his idea that a level 5 leader has two things. I love two. I'm an old hockey player. I can remember two. Two things that really stand out as he looked at the top leaders across the world. The first was humility. And I love that. I just love that word because at the end of the day, leaders, you know, sometimes people think leaders have to be confident and gregarious and outgoing. And I have, in my experience, run across so many quiet leaders that were highly effective. The second word is will. So the combination of humility and will has to always play a place in how leaders generate results through people.
Mm-hmm. You know what, let's just stay there for a minute as you talked about the quiet leader. Leadership being a way of being that can be participated by every person in the organization. And oftentimes people see it as a position and then they get into that role and they need to be a certain way. Just talk about in some of the work you've done with organizations about instilling that idea that every player in the dressing room, every person in the organization has the ability to carry themselves, conduct themselves a certain way that becomes the defining culture, right?
Really does. Just to use a hockey example in the world of business, I found that during my times, and I was fortunate to play 15 years at the NHL level, and I here's what I've learned, Nate, through that experience is you hit about the 8-year mark, the 8th season mark, and you find most of us, not everybody, not the Gretzkys, not the Lemieux, but most of us find that you have to then adjust your game. Because I was on the power play, every power play early in my career. And then now all of a sudden, 9 years in, I'm now in the penalty kill. And then, if you want to continue to play at the NHL level, then you must make an adjustment again. And that probably means that you're more valuable in the dressing room than you are on the ice. and so your ice time's cut and you're moving down onto the back end of the third line. And when I got to the Vancouver Canucks, I was playing with Gino Ojic and others on the fourth line. And I guess here's my point. Here's what I found. And I didn't know this until I experienced it. Fourth and fifth line players at the NHL level, and I believe at every level of hockey, have huge influence on the energy and the direction and the emotion of the team. So as a fourth line player, I can complain and I can be bitter and I can be angry and I can be upset and I can blame the coach and the first line players. And all of that will completely take away from the process of our culture trying to be a winning culture. So I would only say that in the context of leadership often focuses on their direct reports, their top 2, their top 5, their top 10, whatever it is. And that's important. But I really think that this atmosphere that leaders create must penetrate, right? It can't just be to a few people. It must be, like you said, it must have an effect on everybody.
We will leave our mutual friend Jyrke Lume's great line alone today, which is, if he's really good in the room, we should probably just leave him there. We won't go there right now. But the data through, for example, the Supporting Lines Institute that I do work with often actually shows some senior members of the team who are seasoned and have been there for a while actually get left alone to just go and do their thing more often. And when we do our high performance index with a large group and can segregate it by years in the organization, oftentimes the ones that have been there longest, if not in a senior leadership role, find themselves a little bit disconnected back to the group. And because it's sort of trusted that they'll just, do their thing. And I'm picturing that seasoned player that you were at that stage as you see yourself fall in that structural org chart that is a dressing room from power play to penalty kill to fourth line in the fans' eyes, and that role there is equally and so important to continue to support that human who is such an integral part of the team.
100%. And so let's look at the leadership. I'm not going to call them the problems, but let's look at a few issues there. Because as a fourth and fifth line player, my final season in the NHL, I was so thankful because, the Canucks allowed me to hit 1,000 games. So I'm totally thankful. But I played 22 of 82 games and I wasn't injured. Right. So that tells you everything you need to know about, my legs were starting to go. And just when your mind is in good shape, your legs start to go.
Right.
But here's the point. And I'm not blaming Pat Quinn. I'm not blaming any of the assistant coaches at the time. I love my friend Stan Schmiel. But I think this was a learning curve for me. Nate, I believe that at times leadership makes assumptions.
Yes. And
the assumptions are that the players at that fourth and fifth line level are mature, they're older, and they do. I mean, my goal was to try to really mature that leadership group so they could go on to a Stanley Cup final and hopefully win. They didn't, but hopefully win. So here's my point. I needed just a touch more communication as a fourth and fifth line player, just to clarify that role that you're talking about. So don't make the assumption that, everything's good. I'm just going to do my job and things are good. So here's how I describe it. You're going to laugh at me. It's so simple and yet so hard. I believe that a huge leadership responsibility in 2021 is to look at people from what we call a fan player. I've built a little IP around fan player. So I'm not going to get into it now, but it's a simple view, isn't it? You have this picture in your mind, what's a fan, what's a player. But here's what I think needs to happen in leadership. Leadership needs to help people migrate from working to winning. That connection for me, that sort of, I'm going to call it a migration or that journey. People will come to work, and the difference that leadership makes is allowing people to come to win. And the reason I say that is at the NHL level, I believe now, after years of looking back, there's two, really concise sort of views of people that play at the NHL level. Some players come to play and they learn how to play at the NHL level. And that's not a small feat. I mean, not a lot of people get to play there. So I'm very thankful. But here's what I learned. There's a next level, there's the next echelon, and you have to learn how to win at the NHL level. And those two things are different. It's easy to play, but you have to learn how to win. And the win part is as much about how you hold yourself. It's as much about what you do when you lose, right? It's all of these sort of pieces that are more about you than they even are about the hockey structure that you play. And I thought that, for me, that was a great grow-up time when it comes to leading, and then seeing it from a context of sport and then moving that into business.
Yeah, great analogy. And something really caught my attention. You used the words, as that fourth line player who has so much influence in the culture, even if not on the scoreboard all the time, you could have used just a little more communication. And you told me something years ago over breakfast, Ryan, that it was really influencing my youth hockey coaching, but has been influencing my executive coaching now too. You told me a story of a player when you were coaching the Vancouver Canucks, that you asked him for permission to point out to him moments where he was repeating a bad habit. Yep. And that permission, as a leader that sets the stage, I would like you to acknowledge that this is a thing, and when I see it, we need to be able to have a discussion about it. Instantly, like, deflates this defensiveness. And I just wonder if you remember that, or
Sure.
if you want to talk about that a little bit more about the permission and communication.
Yeah, thanks for remembering that, Nate, and thank you for allowing me to share it. You know, I won't use the name, but it was a young player in our team when I was coaching with the Canucks, and I did two things that I would highly recommend to leaders. The first is the young player Elaine Vigneault came to me, and our head coach, and said I was in charge of offense and power play and that type of thing. And he said to me, Elaine said, you better fix that kid or I'm going to send him down to Winnipeg. I love Elaine. He's so good at that. And I said, okay, coach, I'm on it. And I had to think through the process because I had already been talking to this young player quite a bit. And so I did two things, Nate, that I think maybe are things that worked for me. And so maybe they can work for other leaders, your listeners. The first thing is that I found that a new message needs a new place. That's been a powerful realization for me. So instead of sending the same message at the arena, I waited. I set up a place for us to go. I actually took this player around the corner to Starbucks. A new message needs a new place to be delivered. Number two is I started the conversation. We just sort of had a small talk. And then I dug right in and I said, listen, kiddo, I need your emotional permission to coach your best game. And he said to me, what? Like, you're my coach. Wally, you already have that. And I said, that's the problem is I got you here, but I don't have you here. You're not bought in. You do it when it's convenient. And he looked at me and he said, well, what does emotional permission sound like? Like, what is that? And we had a huge discussion around what it would look like. And I said, basically for me, you come back to the bench, and the issue with the young kid was just one thing. He wasn't scoring because he never drove to get to that, that 10, 12 feet in front of the net, the opponent's net, to really be effective as a goal scorer. He played outside. He was one of these kids that said, I'm open, right? I'm way over on the other side of the rink. I'm open. And I said, when you don't drive the net and you come back to the bench, I'm in your face. When you do drive the net and you come back to the bench, I'm in your face. He said, I like that one better. And Nate, what I love about this leadership principle of emotional permission, when we get people's pre-permission to talk about their performance, we give them the atmosphere that says, listen, I'm on your side and I'm going to help you win. Instead of saying, I'm your boss and I need to come to work. So pre-permission is a powerful piece, and emotional permission is even a deeper level. I'll finish the story. The kid went, scored, I think it was 22 goals that year. And so he would drive outside and, go to the outside, not drive the net, not pay the price. He'd come back to the bench and I'd just do this. Right.
Yeah. That's all you needed, right?
I never said a word all year. And then he'd drive the net and pay the price, even if he didn't create an outcome. And he'd come back to the bench and I go, one of the key components that we're finding to increase flow, and this is, I don't want to get there, I don't want to go there because it's a whole nother half an hour for you and I, but to increase flow throughout sport and business is what Csikszentmihalyi calls immediate feedback. And I think this is it's missing in business. It's hard to build immediate feedback loops into every process in business because we can't be there to give it. And I think that I was able to give this kid immediate feedback, and it really shaped the way that he created offense for, well, the next probably 60 games.
I just calculated in my head that half an hour, maybe the hour that you took out of your day to get that emotional permission from him, coffee after practice, that changed the trajectory of his season and potentially his career for another number of years. And so you took we don't have and he doesn't want you in his face every time in the bench telling him the same darn thing that he hasn't made that connection yet. But that time investment to get that permission, that all it took was a shrug or a thumbs up from that point on, right? Like what a great message. And you and I have used the word atmosphere a few times today, and we planted the seed, and I want to give credit to the Roy Group out of Victoria for instilling this in me as one of their learning leads now, that we, not just a leader structurally, but we as people in an organization, in a family unit, on a team, create an atmosphere with our conduct, with the way we are. And that atmosphere just is. It's a cloudy day, it's a sunny day. We're not changing it because that atmosphere has been created. And that causes people to tell themselves a story about themselves. And I think about that player who, when you're in his face on the bench every day for the same darn thing, and he can't seem to fix it because he hasn't made that paradigm shift in himself, that was an atmosphere. And the atmosphere that you created, taking him for a coffee, how'd you say it? A new message needs a new place. You created a new atmosphere that seemingly changed everything. You could do a lecture series on that story. I really think you could.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Nate. And thanks for, bringing that up. I mean, it is a powerful metaphor. It's a powerful leadership story. I'm not pointing to myself. I think as leaders, we try things.
Yeah.
And this one worked for that player for sure. But you and I love questions, and I know we won't have time today to get into coaching questions, even though that might be the one of the key skills in leadership in 2021. But I think that the idea that what I'm pointing to is the idea of a pre-permission question,
mm-hmm.
and then this idea of emotional permission questions. And it really allowed me to say to this young player from an atmosphere point of view, yes, I'm your leader. Yes, I'm supposed to be your boss. You know all that stuff. I'm not trying to lord it over you. I'm not trying to whack you and get you to go better, because that's short term.
Yeah. I
am actually wanting you to know that I'm on your side. I have your back. I think that might, I'll give you another quick little story. I've never done this with my wife. My wife, Jenny, and I are in business. And, I've said to players at the NHL level before, we're going into Philadelphia or whatever, I've said to, maybe a young Swede or a young Finn, and I say that carefully. But I've said, tonight we're on the same line, and I'm not a tough guy, but I've got your back tonight. I got your back. Like, anybody touches you, I probably will get beat up, but they're not going to touch you tonight. And that thought, that concept of I've got your back, is such a transferable concept that we never use. Because why, Nate? Because we got to back it up. Mm-hmm. But recently, in a business deal that my wife Jenny was stick handling, I said to Jen, I've never done this before. You know what, baby? I got your back. And I think that is one of the great concepts of leadership that is underused throughout all parts of our lives. Because when I had this young guy's back, I said, listen, I'm on your side. Am I going to hold you accountable to things that make you successful? Totally. Mm-hmm. But why am I doing it? So you will have success, right? Not me. So I think, Nate, there's you and I could, I don't prefer the word unpack, but we could unpack that for another 4 or 5 days.
Yes, we could. You don't know this question's coming. You mentioned great coaching questions. I want to hear your reaction and thoughts to this question. It landed in my lap a few months ago, and I just thought, this changes everything. And I used it yesterday, and I helped a young leader see a situation entirely. He suddenly saw his own situation entirely differently. What do I need to know about you that will help us work really well together?
I love that. So you're gonna send me that question, right?
I will. I'm going to say it again, and I just want you to just dive into a little bit. What do I need to know about you that's going to help us work really well together?
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea because it really does take down the barriers. There's a couple of key points to that question, to help you. So this is not I'm the boss and you better listen up because I've got objectives, and we have to create outcomes. We have to create, generate certain amount of revenue. It's about you. And I think the other thing that I love is it starts with the what. Obviously, you and I have been trained over the years to be careful with the whys. And the why question obviously, goes to motive. Like, why are you such an idiot? Yeah. It probably isn't the best coaching question.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of what do I need to know, and I love the exploration of that front end of the question. And one thing I would say coming out of that statement or that question that you just made sort of points to something. Somebody asked me the other day, I was on another podcast, and they said, okay, so, why are you doing what you're doing? And, I'm two words come to mind for me. And it drives through hockey, and it drives through business, drives through grandkids, it drives through every part of our life. My number one word, if you were to ask me who I am, and I don't know why this is true, but I am curious. That's it. I mean, why did you go back to school? Why did I go back to school? Like, there's no reason to do that. You just jump in and keep moving and make money. But it's not about money. It's about curiosity. And I think some of the greatest leaders, and let me give context to and I think, Nate, you and I agree with this, but let me give you our 2021 context around leadership. Leaders leading leaders, leaders following leaders. There's no room in 2021 for people to disengage and say, no, I don't need to learn about leadership because I'm not a leader. If you're the gatekeeper, if you're the person answering the phone, you are in charge of the whole business. So we need you to increase your leadership capacity. Here's my point, is I think that this idea of leadership just permeates everything. And so curiosity for me is the key component to growth. And growth for me is the indication of leadership development. So when Maxwell, let's go back to John, he says, if you and I can grow each other to be a 6 out of 10 as a leader, our people have a chance to be a 5. But if we can grow ourselves to be an 8 out of 10 as a leader, our people have a chance to be a 7. Do you know why, Nate, that the world is your play place and my play place? Because every person in every organization needs us. Everyone. We could go forever, right, in life and never hit the people we should be helping to grow. So I think that curiosity, number 2. My number one value, and what I'm finding is Jenny and I are doing a lot of work around leadership, leading through values. Not only their values, but the values of their direct reports. That is a gigantic gap. Okay. And here's my number one value. We have a process where we help people and leaders understand their top 7 values. But my number one value, and I didn't know this, curiosity drives me, but my number one value, when you think of the way that, I've sort of done life, you think, okay, honesty, okay, faith. My number one value is creativity. So why have I written 5 books and got 2 more on the go? Why have we built, 8 pieces of IP that are the models that run our business? So I guess what I'm waking up to the point is, Ryan, why don't you honor creativity a little bit? And so here's how I need to think about these important things as a leader: is how much time in my schedule do I allow myself to be creative?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if that's a value, then again, the word is intentional. As a leader, am I being intentional with myself and with my people? So love where you took us there, Nate. And by the way, just between you and I, that young player's name was Gary Volk.
The value of curiosity and creativity, as the leadership circle describes it, our strengths pushed too far start to work against us. And so when I heard you say, how much time do you need to schedule? It is one of mine as well. And I am stifled if I don't schedule enough in. And I'm distracted if I allow too much, right? Because you don't sometimes get the work done.
True.
Curiosity. I have called this podcast Leading with Curiosity. And I was so curious when I studied titles for podcasts and couldn't find another one called Leading with Curiosity. In this modern world of a coach approach to leadership, I just thought, well, I better snatch that up quick. And it's an idea and a concept, as I looked at it on the page, of using curiosity as a leadership principle and leading with that one. Being curious first. What do I need to know about you that will help us work well together? If I'm curious first, suddenly your idiosyncrasies that don't line up with mine, that drive me crazy as your leader, suddenly I understand through some questions a little bit more about where you're coming from. Like that answer might be something really heavy that I would never have known about that person had I not asked, right? And it connects back, just to put a thread through our conversation, it connects back to that emotional permission. What do I need to know about you? As I said it, I was thinking about that permission that you were talking about earlier. And you and I, if you're my leader and you ask me that, we're suddenly on a completely different place to be able to communicate openly when you've asked me what you need to know about me, right? And you're genuinely curious and you care.
I love that, Nate. You said it at the beginning. You and I could go about 3 hours on this, right?
Yes.
And let's do more of these for sure.
Yeah.
But let me end with to sort of come through the thread through that we're weaving here.
Great.
What hit me, Nate, is I had a chance to go back and to Trinity Western University. I found that the 2 best MA degrees in leadership business were at Royal Roads and at Trinity. And I wanted to honor sort of my faith journey, and so going to Trinity was just the perfect piece for me. Here's the reason I bring that up is we had a chance there to study servant leadership. And servant leadership, most people think, oh well, that's just a faith-based whatever. Well, no, Google servant leadership. It is a very secular, right, process of leadership that has been really developed through science for sure. Now, does it have some faith-based, especially from my side of Christian faith-based application? Can I watch it in certain historical leaders? Yes. And I think what really happened to me is the idea, the question I have to ask probably every day that I lead is motive. Why am I leading? Am I leading to look good? Am I leading to get more money? Am I leading so that the newspaper will write about me? And I think what you said earlier is so important, and the thread that sort of run through what we've talked about is that leadership is not about us, right? Leadership is about them. And I think that's a big, a big sort of piece that, again, Jim Collins, humility. What is humility at the, when you and I think about this, what is humility? It's about really going, well, I don't have to be out front. It can be them. I want to and then will, right? So those two, it's almost like you did. You take will over here. Okay, this is going to happen. You take humility over here. Well, this doesn't have to be about me. And all of a sudden, you've got this leadership, opportunity in the middle that really develops people and allows them to develop themselves.
I'm going to leave us, Ryan, that people can find you on LinkedIn, Ryan Walter, ryanwalter.com. Coaching, executive coaching, is about being in service of others. There was a famous pro hockey coach once that said, "How can these players do this to me?" I heard him say it. How can they do it to me? If we could apply, I would be curious. You and I will be curious. The more and more sport coaches we see start to shift that paradigm to being in service of the team, to see what's truly possible in that organization. Ryan, we will do this again because there's so many things we could have explored that we didn't. And it's I learned so much, like I do every time that I talk to you. And it's such an honor to be able to talk about this at this level of curiosity and shared passion. So onward we go with the rest of our day. Thank you so much. And I look forward to doing it again.
Thanks, Nate. Great job.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Leading with Curiosity. Please share, follow, and rate the show so that other leaders can make positive change in the world. Connect with Nate at nateleslie.ca. And remember, the brain behaves very differently when encouraged to think rather than told to listen.